Greetings, everyone. I am here to share more of my story with you. I would love for you guys to subscribe, like, and share, and hit the notification button so that you will know when I have a new video coming out. I'm going to start this one with telling you guys about living in a house with a man for 16 years that never spoke to you as a little kid. My great aunt raised me, of course, I've said that before, and her husband did not want her to have me, so he cut out all of her resources as far as income was concerned. And I guess he hated me so much, he just never wanted to speak to me ever, ever. And he never did. Out of 16 long years from a baby up, he never uttered a word. I remember one day he was repairing the front steps. We had a screened-in porch, and our house was sitting on cinder blocks, so it was quite a bit high up off the ground. And when I went to see, I was only 3. Naturally, young kids are curious. I went to the screen door to see what he was doing, and he pulled the door open and let me hit the ground because he had removed the old steps and had not replaced them yet. So it was just the porch to the ground. And my great aunt, who I call Mama, came running to see what was wrong. And he lied and told her that I pushed the door open and fell. So, all these things stay in a child's mind forever because I have not forgotten that moment, even though I was 3 years old, because pain makes us remember things. And, I'm sure it had some type of impact on my life growing up, but I managed to survive and be okay. And I'm sharing all this because I'm hoping that I can help someone else to overcome their insecurities and fears and whatever kind of problems they may be having by thinking about their past and not wanting to talk about it, because it was a long time before I wanted to talk about any of this at all. A long, 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 long time. I just wanted to bury it and not have to think about it ever again. And there was one time in growing up period when I was about 5 years old, and this is one thing that I really have kept to myself for a long, long time. But I've just recently realized that there's other people going through similar pain. So I wanted to share this in order to help someone else to make it through their pain. My aunt's husband had a radio shop in the backyard, and he repaired televisions and radios. So one of his clients came over one evening, and my mom was outside hanging up clothes on the line. And he asked her if he could come in and use the bathroom because the radio shop didn't have a bathroom in it, a restroom. And she let him. Now, the house was so small, only three rooms. Well, if you include the bathroom, it was 4. But he came in through the kitchen. I was standing in the middle of the floor in the living room area. And the bathroom, you had to go through the bedroom to get to it. But he stopped in the living room and touched me inappropriately. And that bothered me for many, many, many years because I just stood there motionless, staring at him while he was staring at me doing what he was doing. And I never told my mom about it. As a matter of fact, I didn't tell anyone about it. This happened, when I was very, very young, and I felt guilty all the time because I felt like I was a bad girl for not telling what had happened. And it stayed with me for many, many years and caused me a lot of pain. And my deep purpose for really wanting to share this is because I know there's a lot of other people out there hurting for things that have happened in their lives, and maybe they were young children like I was, and they didn't tell anyone and they felt guilty. This sent me through some horrible, dark moments in my life because it lingered on and on. I felt so guilty that I didn't tell her, and I never told her. She died, and I never ever told her anything about it. But I survived. I made it through it, and now I'm um, old enough to want to share and help someone else to make it through those terrible times. And that guy ended up getting killed. I mean, I wasn't wishing him any bad luck, but when you do bad things, you know, karma has a way of catching up with you and making things right as far as the child is concerned. But I'm telling you, it really did destroy my life in a lot of ways because I felt dirty, I felt unclean, I can't even really describe it to this day how bad I really felt for not telling someone. I didn't speak up because I felt like it was my fault because I stood there and didn't make him stop. I didn't do anything. I just stood there. But the good thing was he didn't get a chance to mess with me too long because my mom hurried up and came back into the house, and then he took off and went into the bathroom where it was supposed to have been going in the first place. And I felt ashamed for all those years that I didn't tell her. There was one period when I was 16 years old. I always had a lot of hair, and in Houston, Texas, it was very hot and humid. So I used to do a little work for some of my neighbors that had a catering service right across the street from where I lived. And they would go out and give parties, serve parties and things for the richer people. And they always had work that needed to be done that some of the neighborhood kids would come over and they would pay us to help them, like shelling peas, cutting up peaches, things like that. So I had made enough money this day to go and get a big pound jar of Vaseline. It used to come in glass jars at that time. And I went to the store and got that. Well, in the meantime, my great aunt's husband and her sister's husband was in the kitchen when I got back. Uncle G, as I called him, was sitting at the table, and Haywood was my mama's husband's name, was standing at the stove cooking or whatever he was doing. But when I walked into the back door where the kitchen was, he looked over at me, and then he looked at Uncle G and told him that if he wanted to give some whores some money, why didn't he just pick somebody like me that had never been touched? And I just went crazy when he said that. So I had a little hot temper, only when you would spark me up like that. I took the jar of Vaseline and I threw it at him. And my mom was sitting out on a screened-in porch, which you had to come from the screened-in porch to the living room, and then opposite the living room was the kitchen. And as she walked in to find out what was all the problem was, all the noise, he threw the jar, and he was actually throwing it at me. But he hit her, and she had to have 11 stitches in her head, and I lost my mind that day. If it hadn't been for my neighbors, I probably would have gotten killed because I wanted to attack him. And it took 2 women to hold me down, hold me back from him. And after that day, we moved out of that house, and I had to go and live with her sister. And that was not a pleasant thing either, because my family members, especially my aunt's nieces, always constantly told me that I was an illegitimate bastard, that I didn't have no parents to raise me other than my great aunt. And it just made me feel like I was less than any of the other children in the family, actually. I always had that feeling. And even my grandmother, my great-grandmother, my great aunt's mother, was a very dark-skinned woman. And my mother was a very light-skinned woman, and her mother was actually white. So my great-grandmother always rejected me because she didn't feel like my mom was her son's child because of the skin color. So I felt rejection all the way around. I have a picture when I was really young, maybe about 6 or 7 years old. And my great grandmother, excuse me, was in that picture. And my cousin, one of my cousins. And it even shows the pain because I was all standoffish and looking like I wanted to cry. And once she had her arms wrapped around my cousin, but she didn't want to touch me. So out of all of that, I still turned out to be a loving person. I could have been hateful and hate people and not have the love in my heart that I do have and did have back then. But I'm so thankful that my great aunt she was everything to me. She made sure that I knew I was loved by her, if no one else. So I'm just sharing all that because now that I am the age that I am, and all through my life, I've always been wanting to be close to people and give them love and show them love because everybody needs love. So when I was 16, we did go and live with my great aunt's sister, which we called Aunt Benny. And she was a very loving woman, but her children they were cruel, and especially to me. I don't know, I was just like an outcast in that family. But in the meantime, things wasn't going well for me. I didn't feel comfortable there. I mean, I was only 16, still in school, but I didn't feel comfortable there. I had to walk like about 2 miles, which was not that far, to catch a bus to go to school. So one day I just decided I wasn't going back there anymore. I went and found me a job in a restaurant, and I was learning how to wait tables. That only lasted a couple of days because the men in that restaurant wanted to touch me, hit me on my behind, and I never could deal with that. I remember when I was in the 7th grade in school, I passed by this boy's desk. He was sitting down, and I had just came into the class, and he reached and grabbed my butt cheeks. And I ended up getting expelled from school, not him, because I reached over and grabbed him by both of his cheeks and came down. And when I came down, I left blood streaks because it's always been my policy. Don't put your hands on me unless I invite you. And I did not invite him to touch me. So they kicked me out of school. They didn't kick him out, but that was okay too. Lesson learned. For both of us, I'm sure. But anyway, back to the job situation. When I was 16, I decided that I was going to take that job, and it didn't last but a couple of days. So then I had met this woman that had a motel in the same area. So she told me I could work for her, and she gave me a room just to sleep in and everything. But being 16, I could not wake up in time. She wanted me to do the cleaning in the morning, and I kept being late and kept being late. So she ended up telling me that I couldn't work for her no longer, which I now can understand. But I pleaded and begged her for that job because I was homeless at that time. I didn't have a place to go. I mean, by my own choice, because I didn't want to stay with my Aunt Benny anymore because of her children was so mean to me. So I went and spent the night with a couple of friends, and then I met this crazy guy that his name was Paul. Real good looking guy, but crazy, crazy, crazy. And I ended up moving in with him temporarily. And I don't know, he was extremely, extremely jealous. I don't know what for, because I never went anywhere. I wasn't the type to go out or anything like that. One time he choked me unconscious until I actually passed out. And then he slapped me to revive me. It was a crazy situation. I'm telling you, I've been through some crazy stuff. And then another time, he hit me in my face with the flashlight, and blood squirted out. And he grabbed me and sucked the blood out so that I wouldn't swell. But eventually, I got away from him. I knew I had to get away from him because he was crazy, dangerous, and I was really too young anyway. But at the time, I was just trying to make do because I didn't have any other place to go. But I ended up leaving there. I had met this guy that used to come and pick up people's laundry, and that was some woods between where I was staying with Paul and the people that I had met that lived on the other side of the woods. And I packed up all my clothes and hid them in the woods. And when that guy came on his delivery day to pick up those people's laundry, I asked him if he would take me away, and he did. So I went to stay with my mom again for a small, brief time, but she didn't really want me there, and I could feel it. And she wanted me not to go to school, but get out and get a job. And I did look for a job. At least I was walking around downtown all day pretending I was looking. But anyway, I'm just sharing all this because I survived through all of this craziness, and I never lost my love for people. You know, I'm so grateful for that. It was born in me. And I always think that maybe because I was conceived in such hot compassion, maybe that gave me all the love that I have in my heart. Whatever it was, I'm thankful for it. So, yes, and my great aunt heard me screaming because the bed shook so violently. I got up to see what in the world was going on under the bed, and what I saw was a beautiful lion. And this lion had a beautiful crown on its head. It wasn't beautiful back then because I was terrified. And it was all aglow with multiple colors flashing from it. And I screamed loudly because I was so terrified of that. So in the meantime, she moved my bed into her bedroom. And I have told you guys earlier in my story that I lived in a house with a man for 16 years who was her husband that never, ever, ever spoke to me or never made eye contact with me. So one night I was sound asleep, laying on my back as I usually used to sleep when I was young. And all of a sudden I felt something real sticky coming up in between my thighs. And I screamed, of course. And she jumped up and turned the light on. Now, mind me, this was in the same room with her, but he didn't care, I guess. Obviously, he didn't. Never had spoken to me, and yet he thought that he could go between my legs. You know, that's kind of weird, but he was a weird guy. And he was crawling around. She was wanting to know what was going on, and he was crawling around on the floor, and he told her that he was looking for his wallet in the dark, you know, which didn't make no sense. But the same man never, ever, ever spoke to me. And that was a very bizarre behavior for me. So that was just a part of my weird experiences growing up in the house with him. The only time that he really made eye contact with me was the day that he hit my mom in the head with that glass jar, accidentally, because that was meant for me. And she had to get 11 stitches, and she was bleeding like crazy because, you know, the temperature was very, very hot, and she had a big gash in her skull. So that was the only time that he really made contact with me because I was losing my mind, wanting to get to him so bad to do him some harm. And thankfully, these women held me back because, like I said before, I probably wouldn't be here to tell you this story because I'm pretty sure I wasn't nearly as strong as him. He was a man, and a crazy one at that. So yes, crazy things happen in people's lives. But getting past that point, once we had to move to my great aunt's sister's house, and one of her daughters was still living with her, and she was the mean one towards me. She always used to tell me, "You're too pretty for this, and you're too pretty for that," and everything. I was too pretty for everything. When we were young, I mean, she was like maybe 20 years older than me, and when all of us would get together, my cousins, my young cousins the same age as me, and some of the neighborhood kids, she would always want to play this game with us. It was called Pop the Whip. It's where one person is leading and all these other children are lined up in a chain like thing. You know, everybody's lined up side by side, holding each other's hands. And she would always put me on the very end, because when you pop the whip and everybody would, you know, it would just splash around like popping a whip, the one on the end would always be the one to get hurt. So I never had good feelings about her because I knew she hated me like the rest of them did. But I survived, and I'm so glad that I didn't allow any of that craziness to make me hate people, because I was a very, very loving child. You know, I wanted to be loved and I wanted to give love. And another time, crazy thing happened. My great aunt had to go into the hospital. I don't remember what it was for because it was a long time ago. I was only 12 years old. But she had to stay for a few days, and she had her sister's daughter, her oldest daughter, to come and stay with me until she got out. So one day she sent me to the grocery store, and I guess I got back too quick because all of the blinds was closed, the door was locked, I couldn't get in. And I'm assuming she was probably in there doing whatever with her aunt's husband. But in the meantime, while she was there, she talked me into calling my birth mom, getting in touch with her, and eventually had me to go and live with her for a little while. So that was another devastating journey because I was used to being well taken care of. Food was on the table all the time, good food, because my great aunt was an extremely good cook. However, I didn't learn any of her qualities about cooking because I wasn't interested in cooking at that time. I've learned everything that I know since I've been an adult. But when I was staying with her, my birth mom, only lasted for 3 weeks. She had enrolled me in school and everything, but it was horrible because she didn't like me either because she blamed me for her mistakes with sleeping with my dad, getting pregnant with me while she had another husband. She had a husband, and he was in the war in Germany. We were in Houston, Texas. And my father had a wife in California, and he was down visiting his family when all this occurred, because my mother, my birth mom, was friends with his sister. So I guess that's how that all started about. But anyhow, she blamed me all the time for her downfall. I mean, it was just the way she treated me. She didn't just come out and say it, but she just treated me like she just hated me. But after being with her for 3 weeks and eating pork and beans out of the can, I was more than ready to go back home because I was not used to that kind of lifestyle. She lived in a rooming house where she had just one room, and they all shared a kitchen and a bathroom together. I was definitely not used to that kind of lifestyle. So I went back home to my mama, and I was so glad to get back. Yes, now I want to share part one of my mission story statement, and I will be reading. Here it is here. I was awakened 2 nights ago at 12:45 a.m. and I feel like I was instructed to write these things down because everything was so vivid and clear to me, and I just hadn't been asleep maybe for maybe 3 hours, maybe 4, and I felt invigorated and ready to go. So here we go. By sharing my story, I feel like it's a cleansing of my soul to finally let go of the pain, hurt of the things that happened to me in my life. Because it was meant for me to go through this journey, I was chosen for this task. My life was not a mistake, and I certainly believe that it was just meant to be. I've been given the beautiful opportunity to help others that are struggling with life, with life's bitter battles, to understand their true calling. And I believe that with all my heart, mind, body, and soul. We all need each other. Together we stand, divided we fall. Life is a battlefield, and only the strong survive. And I strongly believe that each battle we face is a preparation for our future mission. We are being prepared for greatness, not for our own benefits, but to help our brothers and sisters out of the miry clay. I don't regret anything that I've been through in life, because now I realize that I was being educated to be a soldier, of love. And I have lots of love for people, no matter how they are, how they act toward me. It's just not in me to have hate. And I'm so grateful for that. Although I grew up in the late 40s and the early 50s, where prejudiceness was everywhere, all around. Even in my own neighborhood, I remember it was segregated in a way, even because we had high yellow blacks, we had medium blacks like me, we had dark black skinned people, and they all was separated from each other. You know, everybody had their own little cliques. So me, I was pretty much the only one in my area that looked like me with my color skin. So I felt segregated all in my own little world. But that was okay too, because I had my great aunt and she was just a wonderful woman. I'll give everything to her. I really do, because without her, there would be no me. I probably would be crazy, dead, or whatever. And I also want to say that I am ever, ever so grateful to the beautiful ancestors for guiding me, leading me, and helping me to make it through where I have gone so far. I'm in my 80th year. I'll be 80 years old November. I can't believe it myself, but I've been living all this time, so I know it's true. But I've been blessed. I feel great. I don't take any medications. I do a lot of herbals. I eat really great compared to how I used to eat when I was younger. That's another story that I'll get into at a later time. But yes, I am very, very grateful. I'm honored to have been chosen for this task. And I may say some things that might be shameful to some people, but I just want to let it all out. And if I can help someone else to overcome their shyness and need to get things out, let it go. So thank you so much for watching. I do hope that you have subscribed to my channel. If you haven't, please do so. Please hit the notification bell so you'll know when I come up with another one. And share it and like it. Thank you so much. Have a beautiful evening, morning, wherever you are, whatever you're doing. Peace and love. Thank you again.